In this video, I compare flash with continuous light to see which is best at freezing splashes.
Adorama TV presents Take and Make Great Photography with Gavin Hoey.
Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching Adorama TV, brought to you by Adorama, the camera store that has everything for us photographers. In this video, I'm going to look at freezing fast-moving subjects. Now this is something I've done many times before here on Adorama TV in all sorts of different ways, but the theme that's always run through them is the light. I use flash. So the question I get asked, and the one I'm going to answer in this video is, well, can I do the same thing but with continuous light? So what I've got here are 4 different lights. I've got 2 different types of flashes, 2 different types of continuous light. I'm going to use all 4 lights to create this image that I'm going to call splash light. And we'll see whether or not it's possible to do it with different light sources. Now I don't know how this is going to work out. So let's get this out the way, set the pool up and get splashing. So let's start with the setup. Now, I'm not going to go in depth here. Check out the Adorama Learning Center for a lot more information on how I do splashes. But the basic setup is this. I've got a light at the back. That's obviously going to change as I go through the video. All of the lights are going to fire through my tracing paper screen. I've got a paddling pool in the hopes that it will capture some of the water, not get too messy. The actual light bulb itself is on a black glossy floor tile, and because I'm only using a single light, I want to fill in the shadow side of my light bulb, hence the small mirror. Hopefully that'll bounce a bit of light in, we'll find out in a second. Obviously I could use a second light, but the whole purpose of this video is to use just a single light. So that's the basic setup. One more thing that's absolutely essential, you're gonna need a towel. This is likely to get messy. It's always a good idea to know where your towel is. So what about the camera setup? Well, to keep things the same, I'm going to try and keep all of my shots at f/16. A good depth of field, I'm really close and splashes go way further than you realise. f/16 is my aperture of choice. Other than that, everything else is up for grabs. So my ISO, I'll try and keep that reasonably low. My shutter speed will be proportionate to the light that I'm using. Let's just take some shots and see what happens. So I'm going to start with my go-to light, the Flashpoint Streak Light 360. It's a powerful flash. It's got a short flash duration at its lowest power settings, and that's what I've got this set to, 1/128th of its full power. And I'm just going to take a shot and just see if that actually looks fine, actually. Brilliant, that's perfect. So its lowest power setting is terrific. Let's pour some water on and see how that goes. Now, the lowest power setting gives a flash duration of about a 10,000th of a second. Should be pretty much perfect for stopping water. Here we go, let's make this kind of wet. That's okay, we get a couple of shots like that. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. That looks really, really nice. Thing is, at that really low flash power, I should be able to set the camera up into continuous shooting, sequential shooting here on the Olympus. I should just be able to pour it and keep going. Let's have a quick test. Yeah, okay, here we go. And it will just keep going and going and going. That's fantastic. And it'll keep up with me. So things are getting messy, as expected. And that is brilliant. The flash is easily keeping up with the camera. Although it's not the way I like to shoot, it does give me some great choices. So now I've swapped over to the Flashpoint Zoom lithium-ion speedlight. It's a less powerful flash, but it's still set to 1/128th power. Not surprising, it's nowhere near as bright as with the streak light. So I need to increase the power of the flash. That means keeping the flash on for longer, which means a longer flash duration, less freezing power. I reckon that's about 3-ish stops. Let's go up to a 16th power. Try that. Yeah, 1/16th power looks about right. But is that enough to freeze the action? Well, let's find out. Let's pour this on. Here we go. Yeah, it looks pretty good, except when you get right to the edges, you can see there's a little bit of smudging, a little bit of blurring of those fast-moving drops. So in this case, it's close. I reckon if I drop it down to 1/32nd power and compensate by increasing the ISO to 400. Let's try that. And again. Oh, and once more. Well, that is definitely better. It's perhaps not as good as the streak light, not surprisingly, but I reckon that is probably acceptable. So the test, will it do the continuous shooting? Okay, well, let's just see. That looks promising. I think it might, you know. Okay, here we go. I think it did pretty well, actually, keeping up with the high-speed continuous shooting. So with continuous light, there are as many choices there as there are in flash. I'm going to start with something small and cheap. I've got just a 10-watt LED torch flashlight around the back there. Gives a beautiful beam of light. 10 watts of LED light is really, really bright. Trouble is you can't see it because I've got even brighter video lights lighting the room. So let's switch those off. Now it was a bit gloomy in here, so you'll have real trouble seeing me, I appreciate that. But let's just take a shot at the same settings as I had for the speed light, and it's pretty much underexposed, not surprisingly. I'm going to increase my shutter speed to 1,000th of a second. I reckon that's an absolute minimum I need with continuous light to get something even reasonably sharp. And then I'm going to increase my ISO until I get correct exposure. So I'm still, oh my goodness, I'm still way under. I'm a stop under at 256,000 ISO. This isn't going to work. That 10-watt LED light is not bright enough. Now, obviously, I need something a lot brighter for my continuous light, and I kind of thought that might happen, so I have prepared well, it's one of my video lights, actually. It's got 4 fluorescent bulbs in it. Each one's a 105-watt fluorescent. That's equivalent, roughly, of about 1,900 watts, 1,800 watts of continuous tungsten light. So it's pretty darn bright as lights go. It takes a minute to warm up, so let's just turn that on. Now, once again, to be fair on the test, I need to turn out my video lights, because if we're shooting with ambient, that is going to make a difference. And these video lights are seriously bright. There you go. But nonetheless, you can see the difference in brightness between the LED that I had earlier and this light, because you can still see me, which is a good thing. Now, the first advantage of using continuous light is you get a preview. What you see on the screen is what you're going to get. Fantastic. And I can see I need to move the light back. And that's really helpful because with flash, you know, you can figure it out, but you never really know until you've taken the first shot. Okay, that's better. So what about the exposure? Now, I had the ISO dialed up to maximum for that LED light. I can reduce that ISO a lot because I'm getting at least +3 stops. In fact, I can come down to 1600 ISO. There we go. Let's just take a shot like that and see if that works. Okay, here we go. And the answer is no, it's rubbish. Absolutely terrible. It looks fine, but the minute you go and have a closer look, you can see the amount of smudging on those water drops as they're flying through the air at 1,000th of a second. It's not even close. Now, I can increase my shutter speed to 2,000th of a second, but of course my shot becomes underexposed. So I would either have to increase my ISO, or I'm going to have to break my own rule and adjust my depth of field. I don't want to do either. That's the trouble. I mean, yeah, I could add in an extra light. One more light, the same of that, would give me one more stop of illumination. I'm going to choose the ISO. I'm going to go for the ISO and have a grainy shot with depth of field rather than a less grainy shot with less depth of field. Let's try that. Test shot, yeah, that works fine. Here we go. Okay. And that is better. That is better, but it's nowhere near as sharp as the flash. The pen F goes up to 8,000th of a second, but to get that, I need to lose 2 stops of depth of field. That's going to bring me back to F8, 8,000th of a second, 3,200 ISO. Of course, I can put this in continuous shooting as well because I'm using constant light. I don't have to worry about flash recycling. Okay, here we go. Clean the lens because the lens will get filthy dirty and very, very damp. And that does show. Well, you know what? If I look beyond the shallower depth of field and the more noisy image, that did really well. In fact, that actually did far better than I thought it was going to. That's not bad. So with everything packed away, I've looked at the images and I've got some conclusions. Let's start with the really obvious stuff. The torch 10-watt LED flashlight is a brilliant flashlight, but there's nowhere near enough light to illuminate fast-moving subjects. That was a fail. The other end of the scale, the Streaklight 360 just blew everything else out of the water. By far the best light here, short flash duration, crisp, wonderful shots. Things that did surprise me, the other two lights. The Speedlight did really well. Okay, I had to increase my ISO a bit, but it was able to keep up with the continuous shooting from the camera, and I still had that crispness that flash gives me. The Fluorolight, the continuous lights, the 4 fluorescent bulbs in here, they did better than I thought. Now I knew I'd have to compromise, and sure enough, more ISO, shallower depth of field, nowhere near as crisp as flash, but a push. Yes, you can light this stuff with continuous light. Is it as good as flash? No, it's not even close. But if that's your only light source, you can make that work. Now, if you want to see more videos from myself and the other amazing presenters right here on Adorama TV, you know what you've got to do? You've got to click on the subscribe button. See, I found a use for the torch. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.